What up? I'm on a work phone hotspot. See if anyone shows up. Of course, I didn't tell anyone but Stan. Is that you, Stan? Is the quality okay or is it laggy? Works pretty good. It's hot. It's like 85. And I had to hike like a mile down this steep ass right away to look at some trees. Whoop. Hold on. Nothing crazy. Yeah, it's like I said, it's just I'm just on a hot spot. I got 3 bars though, but whatever. How long did you go on your live stream? That's cool. Yeah, man, I think it's a great idea to do the live streams. You know, I mean, obviously, you know, doing the edited podcast episodes with guests and then when it's, you know, when we have something solid to talk about, I think is still great. But I like just you going on too, because I mean, honestly, my whole like vision with this YouTube channel wasn't just me making videos, you know, is like kind of you know, a collaborative thing. You know, I'd love to see you keep doing live streams. I'd love to see, you know, a lot of the people we've had on as guests, you know, if they were interested, you know, that's part of the others and help find the others, you know. I mean, if we could figure out how to do that down the road, I think that'd be awesome, you know. I think that, well, you have to figure it out because I'm pretty sure the login info for this is the same thing as my like Gmail email, but yeah, like, yeah, I'd love to see this be a platform for anyone to come on and do their thing. But you know, I don't know, because I think you do a really good job. Like, for as nervous as you were to do it or whatever, I think that you know, live streams went really good and people resonate with you just as much as me. So. Yeah, or you know, if someone makes a video or a movie or whatever, you know, it'd be a place to broadcast it. But you know, fucking crazy times, man. I know you said that you know, in Chicago there, that the National Guard was setting up near your house. I was just talking to my buddy who he's National Guard. He's been deployed since like March down in Louisville, uh, set up in like a tent to uh, be like triage for a hospital, and they never ended up even needing them. They've just been sitting there on their phones. And he's got 13 days left of his deployment, but they just got word that they might be extending it and sending them into Louisville or Lexington, to crack some hippie skulls. And he's like, I hope they don't end up doing that, because he's like, I'm more likely to turn on the soldiers and the police, and I think that might be where we're like headed with this, is like, just how violent can this get? How many people, or what percentages of people, especially that are in the authority roles of police and soldiers and stuff, like, are down with just like an endless violent war of government versus people, and I think there's no limit to the anger that the people can feel towards authority, but there is a limit to how much people that are, enforcing the laws and the rules of that authority will blindly comply, like, I don't know. It's interesting to see where this is going to go, especially when, it's very clear that our leadership on the federal level is all about adding hate and anger and violence to the equation, and not trying to mend the relationship between the people and the government. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I think, like you said yesterday, that the outcome, or no, on the live stream we did together, you said, I feel the outcome will be good, but it's just scary getting there. And, like we were saying on the Discord the other day, that this is very similar to the 60s, and even on an astrological level, apparently. But after Martin Luther King was assassinated, there was riots that caused like $50 million worth of damage and lasted like 6 or 7 days. And after that, the Civil Rights Bill was passed. So, I think like we'll see some sort of legislation to hold police accountable for their actions that come out of this. I hope that's the outcome. But it's also a weird time, because while all these protests and riots were sparked by an act of racism, and Black Lives Matter is the action group that is organizing the protests, I think there's more at play here than just racism and stuff like that. It's disenfranchisement, and that's why you got so many groups down there just causing chaos. Is it's like the people are disenfranchised from this government, from this country, and at a time where we're also scared and worried, and the economy's going to shit and everyone's out of work. It's just like this perfect shitstorm. And it all comes down to that, like the disenfranchisement, and the race matter. I mean, it's like people of color never were even franchised, so they're fighting a double fight basically. And I just think the government's wrong in thinking that you can just fight it off. Like there's gotta be some sort of change to come about of it. I don't think people are just gonna get tired and give up. But it's fucking strange times. It's hard to not pay attention to it and not let it bother me, but it does. It was good, like just hiking for an hour and a half without my phone was probably the best I've felt all week, because I wasn't looking at Twitter and Facebook and all that. Damn, dude, you rode a sailboat from the Caribbean to the Netherlands? That is nuts. How long did that take? What's up, Kenny? How you doing, buddy? Sorry, this is hard to do on a phone. 3.5 weeks? Holy shit. Like, how many people, like, what size sailboat are you talking about? Like, how many people are with you? When am I going to do mushrooms next? Oh, man. I hope soon. I mean, I really want to. I think it's been a year since I've had any psychedelic experience outside of microdosing. And I really, when all the virus stuff happened, I mean, I was kind of scared and I was worried of having a trip and having it go south because of, all this anxiety and fear that I'm trying to ignore or something like that. But I think I'm past all that, like, to where any negative anxiety I have is more like macro, it's like everybody, like, I know I'm going to be okay. I'm more worried for, like, other people, and I think that could lead to a very insightful trip, though. So, like, I really want to. It's just, the normal way that I can get a trip in is, like, if my kids are at their grandparents at night, and that's not going to happen for a while. And then the other way would be to, tell my wife I'm going out of town or something like that. And I don't think, like, she would just be jealous and really not be cool with that. So, I just don't know when I'm going to get to trip again. I don't know. I did just get word that because hurricane season coming up, I'll probably have to go out of town and work, like, emergency cleanup stuff. Like, if there's a lot of down trees on power lines and stuff like that, and I would be out of town. And they said normally when that happens, they, like, mobilize everyone, but then end up not having to do anything, and you just kind of, like, hang out in a hotel room watching TV for a week, getting paid overtime and stuff. So if that happens, yeah, maybe I'll do that, because I'll be out of town and I'll have a reason, and my wife can't complain about that. But I don't know. I'm really jealous of anyone who is getting to have some, insightful mushroom trips during this time, or acid or anything, because I just really wish I could. And I could do it at night, I guess, but it always adds another element, because I can't really go deep or let go, because I'm always like, oh, there's someone up, the kids up or whatever, and my kids get up and pee in the middle of the night, and they're loud all the time and everything, so it's just tough. Yeah. Yeah, I have, Stan, I have some mushrooms. They're old as hell now. I mean, I got them from a friend of ours last year. um, I mentioned something during your live cast or live stream yesterday that I wanted to expand on. And I've joked about weaponized LSD quite a bit. And I first, came up with the idea of, like, a way to force peace in the Middle East. It's like we have no problem if you suggest, hey, we should bomb terrorist organizations with literal bombs. Nobody has a problem with that. You can kill women and children as collateral, and it's a cost of war or whatever. But if you bring up the idea of, like, hey, can we, like, have some sort of, crop duster or some sort of bomb that lets off a cloud of LSD, Like that's a crazy idea, and people would think that's ridiculous. And I think that's ridiculous to be accepting of death and destruction, but uh, to force a mind blowing, possibly life changing and direction altering experience on people, like that's a bad idea. I've never understood why that was a crazy idea. But then I was thinking about it with this, where I have a friend in Indianapolis who he was just visiting his girlfriend, and because of the widespread use of tear gas that police are unleashing on cities right now at curfew times, they were just in their like fourth or fifth floor apartment with the window open and got gassed. And how many other people went through that? So that's what I was thinking. And obviously this is for entertainment purposes only. I'm not trying to incite someone to do something illegal. But if someone could work up some sort of tear gas canister that had LSD in it and throw that shit back at the cops, like, how would this be different? And then I made a joke in the comments of do it with drones instead of death from above. You could call it love from above, and just fucking pepper spray the whole crowd with acid. How would these riots and stuff turn out any worse? I mean, if we're talking of, we always bring up the term weapons of mass destruction. Um, I think LSD could be a weapon of mass unification. And I know there's been people, uh, would be like in text threads and stuff like that. People are bitching about the government and where things are going. And like, I'm always like, LSD in the water system, it's the only way, man. And I do remember seeing something where like there was some group that was like their whole plan was to, find a way to get enough LSD into like water reservoirs and water towers and stuff like that. I don't know. I guess I don't agree with that, because you got water fountains in schools and stuff like that, and I'm not saying that becomes that whole problem with dosing people that don't know they're going to get dosed. But I kind of feel like in the riot situation, it's like the cops and the rioters are choosing to be there. So anyone that gets dosed through weaponized LSD in that scenario, that's the cost of being down there and being a part of that stuff, I guess. It's probably not the best idea, but it's an idea I've had of like, why not? Like I said, I'm definitely not condoning anyone do it. It's more of an idea. And if it ends up happening, it wasn't me. Yeah, a weapon of mass mind expansion. It was. I mean, it's, there's definitely videos and stuff you can see of protests and stuff just as violent in the 60s as they were now. But then there was also, the love-ins and stuff like that in parks and everything and just people having a mass gathering all on acid and passing around cups and getting dosed accidentally or not thinking they were going to. And a lot of those people have grown up to be the most progressive people in their generation. The baby boomer generation, for as stuck in their ways as they are, the cool ones you can trace back to being in those parks in the 60s and, saying peace, love, dope, man, and whatever. The ones of that generation or that part of that generation that ended up having roles where they were, on board of directors for stuff, or district managers of things. They're the most progressive part of that nation, and I think we're missing that with the psychedelic generation now. I don't know how, and it plays into the disenfranchisement I was talking about. I don't know how powerful we're going to be in the future. I think we're powerful in our numbers, but not in our positions, if that makes sense. And what I mean by the disenfranchisement is like, the system has been set up to keep the hippies out almost, and maybe in response to the baby boomer hippies that got into power. Who has that much L to spare? I mean, it's a worthy donation to the cause, right, Natural Born? I think psychedelics are popular, and I think they're just as popular as the '60s. Um, it's just maybe in a more artistic way and not in as much of a revolutionary way. But I don't know. I mean, there's still the divide, in the psychedelic party crowd and the psychedelic like spiritual wellness crowd. Um, but also, I think a big part is that so much of psychedelic communities are um, virtual, like ours is, and if someone can drop some spiritual knowledge and psychedelic influence on Twitter, and you're going to have, you know, five people agree with them, and three say they're full of shit and they're an asshole or whatever. There's this the internet keyboard warrior kind of mentality divides us, just like any other community. To where maybe in the '60s you didn't have that, because there wasn't that kind of thing. You had to get together in real life, which is less confrontational. Uh, so I don't know. I think psychedelics are plenty popular, and they're obviously more mainstream um, from a therapeutic standpoint than they were in the '60s, and I think that'll go a long way. But I think, you know, for as much as I talk about that, the psychedelic crowd needs to be the landing pad for a lot of lost souls from this time, and whether that's for economic reasons or uh, you know just the way things are going and how up unsettling this time is for most people. I think that, especially kind of the civil unrest is going to set back a lot of the movement that we had going on for the short term. But I still think that in the long term, psychedelics are going to be what heals a lot of people coming out of all this. Mushrooms are interesting to you. Context of the experience, it makes it seem like our existence is some kind of circus run by flying saucer aliens. It's so bizarre. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely something, and we're gonna have Chris back on from the episode with his wife a few episodes of our podcast back if anyone saw that. Chris is going to come back on. He was in the Air Force, and he's seen UFOs, while flying. He's also had experiences, just kind of in his personal life, and is very deep into that. It's an area that we've had a lot of common ground and conversations and stuff. So we're gonna have a UFO themed podcast soon. But that's one area that I'll have a lot to say on that. Is that the psychedelic journey and visions? There's a lot of common ground in alien encounters and psychedelic experiences. Definitely the book Supernatural by Graham Hancock kind of touches on all that, and it definitely shaped the way I view it. It's just interesting. He connects in there even cave paintings to psychedelic experiences and shamanic traditions and UFO encounter stories and stuff like that. And I think all of that it's kind of it's all tied together. That the time travel, near-death experiences, religious experiences, all of it's like the same thing. It just has different terminology to describe it. And I think definitely, Will, a Cosmic Giggle podcast, he was talking about in his last one, Terrence McKenna's idea that mushroom spores came from outer space. I definitely believe that. My ecologist mind believes that too. And it's kind of like, I forgot the, it's kind of like directed panspermia is the term, where it's like, we can't get to a point. I think physics stops us from being able to physically explore the universe. And I think the way to explore the universe is with our consciousness and our spirit. And that part is never ending, just like the universe is never ending. The physical body very much ends, and our physical limitations of where we can go in the universe very much has an end point. But I think the spirit and the consciousness are eternal and never ending, and there's no limit to where they can go. And I think that's what the mushroom experience kind of gives us a glimpse of. And I think the high 30 gram stuff that like Kalindi IE was doing was like fully, like most of us to take like 5 grams or whatever, like we're just kind of touching that notion. We're just kind of like peeking through the telescope, and those real high gram things are really traveling the universe for sure. There's something to that. There's some reason that like so many of us that take psychedelics, our mind goes to space, and eternity and life after death and all these, we tackle all these ideas. And I think that's kind of why. And that term I used back there, directed panspermia, like I think there is like a point where perhaps, some far out civilization developed psilocybin and other, natural entheogens, and shot those molecules out into space, not unlike a dandelion blowing its seeds off into the wind to carry it to wherever it can start. Some dandelion seeds land on concrete and don't do anything, or just land somewhere where they can't grow, and some of them land somewhere where it's perfect for them to complete their cycle. And it's possible that that's what mushroom spores do, is they just go out, and some of them land on comets and frozen planets and hot planets and everything, but some of them land on planets that are in the Goldilocks zone, or whatever you want to call it, that Earth is in, around stars. And they just grow there until life evolves to the point that it needs it, and I think that's a good way to look at natural plant entheogens, is like they've become part of human evolution at times where we need it. When we were semi, conscious apes, we needed to take that next step to being conscious and being able to communicate and organize and construct and do a lot of the good things that humans have done for this planet. And then we got to a point like now where we're so in our own way, and we don't understand the power we have as real gods and creators of existence, that I think it's another time where we need entheogens to get over this next step, to really understand that peace, love, and cooperation and unity are not they're not just nice things to have in a society. They're an essential part to continuing life. Like we can't fight our way out of this. We can't fight our way through this. All the animosity going on in the human race right now, like the only way that is going to get any better, the only way we're going to move forward is through peace and love and understanding and cooperation. And I think that psilocybin and other entheogens provide that in spades to the human psyche. For you as a 20-year-old, it's kind of ludicrous how your parents view drugs, drug use in general. I just don't get it. Well, they don't get it. You get it, like that's the thing. I imagine your parents haven't done it, and that's part of the problem with when we talk about the things we talk about with psychedelics, people that haven't done it, it sounds fucking ridiculous. It's like and that's part of what my problem with drug policy has been, is that to lump psychedelics in with all the awful shit there is out there that is a drug as well, it isn't fair to the psychedelics. And that all comes down to the whole, like, the way that the U.S. scheduled drugs. It created this view in the mind of people that don't have any experience of it's just a drug, and it makes you think like all this stuff is crazy and there's aliens and stuff like that. But it's like, okay, motherfucker, you try it and tell me that it's all in my head, like, so, when people say people don't get drugs, it's like they just haven't done it. It's I don't know. I feel bad for them, but I'm not going to let them impart any guilt on me. Oh, you did 5 grams in silent darkness, Jake? Yeah. It's insane, man. Yeah, to think about where else mushrooms have evolved in the universe. I mean, it's like, when people say it's impossible with how many planets there are that, that there isn't life on other planets. And I take that another step further and like, okay, with how important psilocybin is, it's impossible for me to believe that psilocybin doesn't exist on any other planet, and so I mean, I think there's a lot of life on other planets that like we can't even comprehend. But I think that there's a lot of, if you look the structure of the universe, everything's repeated, like the way planets form and the way orbits form and galaxies and all this, there's subtle variations, but for the most part everything falls into the same thing, which leads me to believe as an ecologist that life forms the same way, even down to like the, if you've ever seen the pictures of like what a neuron looks like in a brain, it looks exactly like the universe, or the eyes look exactly like galaxies and like all that kind of stuff. If you look at a freeze frame of lightning, it looks exactly like the way trees grow and the way that rivers form naturally, and like there's just all these like the whole universe is matter and energy, and there's obvious laws that those follow, that everything falls into the same place. So I really think that there's other planets out there that have the same trees on them and the same water and stuff like that. Everything might just be further along or not as far along as our planet, but for the most part, like the same stuff grows and interacts with each other in the same way. And I think that mushrooms and ayahuasca and all that, like it exists in other places. And I think the only thing that is different is culture, but life is the same everywhere, and entheogens are part of that life. Evolution, just the word evolution and the term and the idea of it, I believe that's a universal law. Evolution is. I believe progress is an evolution, or a universal law. Like everything moves forward. That's one thing I've been thinking with like the civil unrest right now. It's like, man, all across, since the term hippie has been a thing, the hippies have been right. No one believes them at the time, but everything moves the way hippies see it moving. It's progress. I just think the whole notion of make America great again, or just conservatism in general, or get back to the good old days or the way it used to be, like that's an ideology that is flawed from the get-go. I just don't, you can't hang on to the past. No matter, you can learn from the lessons of the past and incorporate them into the future, but you can never go backwards as a society or as a person. And I think all of that is evolution. All of that's progress. And I hate that, in our political banter, people can say like, oh, you're just a stupid progressive, like blah, 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 or whatever. And it's like, humans are progressive. Like we're never going to go back. You see my channel as mentorship and this psychedelic stuff. It's awesome for having an online community to talk about this stuff with. Yeah, man, I agree. Like I'm glad that there's 6 people willing to let me sit in my truck and rant about mushrooms and aliens. you know but I think it's more important for the the tons of people that have reached out with like legit questions, whether it's dosing or, you know, wondering like how to integrate something that happened. And, you know, I mean, we've had great guests on the podcast, but I've had great just like Skype conversations with people that I know have made a difference. And I'm honored to be in that role because, you know, what this community means to me, I know it means to so many other people, is like-minded people to talk to. You know, I can't talk to my neighbor about, you know, hey, do you think there's psilocybin mushrooms on Mars, you know, or ever was? Or, you know, how many times do you think humans have moved between Mars and Earth? You know, like I can't have that conversation with my neighbor. Like I have to talk about, you know, how are they going to handle football preseason, or, you know, does Lowe's or Home Depot have the best price on grass seed, you know, and stuff like that. And it's like, so that's what this channel's always been about. I'm glad that people look to me as a mentor, but in no way was that, you know, my goal with anything. You know, I have enough self-doubt and as everyone else, and like don't see myself as anyone who could be a mentor, but you know, this channel has helped me kind of see that side of myself and try to do things to you know, foster that. So I appreciate that you see the channel that way, but it's more just an outlet to talk about the crazy shit I think about. You know, and the fact that it resonates with, you know, however many people watch the videos is, you know, and I know, you know, Stan feels the same way and everything. What's going on, Tactical Luke? Yeah, oh, the other idea I had when I was walking today is, you know, I've heard so many people say like, and my wife is one, like, it sucks, like, she had just started like not being scared of the virus, and just wanted to like get back to, you know, kids being able to do things and stuff like that. And then it's like all this rioting and everything, it's like got her just scared for the future again, you know. And I know a lot of people feel that way. And I think, you know, everything from the human actions going on now to just the threat of the virus and other viruses and other diseases and everything. I think like one thing that it's so hard for humans to, you know, and what we're struggling with right now is we're being slapped in the face with the reality of our role in the ecology of this planet. You know, I definitely, I think we were talking about it a little bit ago on the book club channel of the Discord, but there's a book by James Lovelock called Gaia. There's a series of them, but it started with the one. And it's this idea, and the book is small, it's very sciencey. He puts a lot of data out there to support his hypothesis, but his hypothesis is that Earth is a superorganism. We're just part of it, you know. And that's one thing that psychedelics definitely, like the humbling nature of psychedelics, at least in my experience, has been like, you know, you are but a grain of sand on a beat that is larger than you can comprehend. And I think a lot of psychedelic culture comes to that realization, you know, and it's one reason we can lose a lot of like fear from having a you know, an ego death type of experience with psychedelics and stuff like that. And once you like start understanding the Gaia hypothesis of like, we're no more important than the ant you just stepped on. You know, we're no more important than that tree over there, you know. And in fact, that tree's going to live longer than us. It's entirely possible that that tree's more important than us, you know. We can build roads, we can cut that tree down, we can plant more of those trees, we can do a lot of powerful things, but that doesn't really, that's just our role. That doesn't mean we're more important. And starting this virus, it's a realization that none of us are really coming to, of like, you know, we're just part of this whole equation. And Gaia, Mother Earth, regulates the whole system, you know. And I think that, you know, it's very possible that the virus is just put into the system to kind of, you know, rewrite the code, so that we live in balance a little better than we had been, you know. Just with a month of a shutdown, you know, water systems cleaned up, air cleaned up, species, you know, endangered species started coming back. Like, I mean, it's amazing that, like, the impact we have on this planet can start reversing itself almost immediately, you know. And it's you know, I don't want anyone to die, but unfortunately that's what it takes for us to change anything, you know. And it's the same with the protests and riots and stuff. If people were just sitting in the streets and there wasn't any fighting, I don't know if that would change anything, you know. So it's almost like this violence and crap has to happen. I don't want to be a part of it. I hope none of you are a part of it. I don't want people to die on either side. I don't want people to get hurt and have lasting things, but it's like we get so stuck in our ways and we can't focus on what's important, that we need shocking shit to make us realize what's going on. You know, and that's part of our ecology too. There's every organism has what's called a carrying capacity within a you know, a biosystem like the Earth. And you know, say you have a 10-acre field or something like that, and you have it fenced in, and you just let deer in there, and they can't get out and they can't get in. They will continue to breed and eat, and there is a carrying capacity, like of how many of those deer will be able to live sustainably, you know, in that spot. And humans have a carrying capacity too. We just also have, and this has been argued, you know, there's a whole bunch of different ways to debate what the carrying capacity of humans is. Is it defined by space? Is it defined by our sociology? Is it defined by our psychology? You know, and all this stuff. And so, like, humans, because we can move, we can adapt our environment, we can grow food, we can plant food, we can make food in a lab, we can do a lot of things to alter what our carrying capacity is. But the sociologists that argue about carrying capacity, they say that, you know, the variables that determine humans' carrying capacity is war, famine, and disease. And right now, we're experiencing all of those, you know. Maybe not declared war by governments, but I mean, you can't say that what's going on in cities right now isn't a war. It's a war of the people versus the regime. There's a culture war going on, definitely, of the people supporting one side or the other, you know, whether or not they're taking part in it. The famine, I don't think that's hit yet, but I think it will hit. And it may not be of like people can't get the food to eat. It will be that they can't afford the food to eat. And then obviously the disease part. So it's possible that, like, without looking at this whole situation that's going on right now, that it's not just a cultural thing, it's not just a society thing, it's an ecology thing. And maybe that's just my outlook on it because that's my education and training, but it all makes sense, and it's stuff that I've seen argued by ecologists and sociologists and and economists and stuff over and over and over again for years, and then it's just all come to a head right now. So I think that's an important way to look at things right now. Is that this is an ecological moment just as much as it is a cultural thing. I don't know if any of that made sense. Natural born psychedelics have brought you and your husband closer. Yeah, I mean, psychedelics and relationships, like it's so important. I talk to a lot of people that use psychedelics and like either hide it from their wife or husband, or you know their husband or wife doesn't do it with them, and it's like, man, you're missing a great component of it. It's great for personal solo journey, but the bond and everything, even my wife was just saying yesterday, or you know she was like, I really hope we get to trip again at some point. Like, she's like, the same thing. She's like, I don't know when we're going to be able to do that again, because we can't do it together while the kids are in the house. We can't get away from the kids for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, I know who you are, natural born. I know who your husband is too. You're both dirty hippies. Humans are the virus, so now she's fighting back. Yeah, I wouldn't say humans are virus. They're bacteria. That they can be beneficial until they overrun. There's an old man, like, I think that's from Joe Rogan's like stand-up CD, like before he even had the podcast. When he was talking how he was like on a plane and he was looking at LA from above, and he was like, have you ever seen a sandwich that got all moldy in your fridge? And that's what LA looks like from above. It looks like a moldy sandwich. and And he was like, I think that's what humans are supposed to do. They're supposed to eat the fucking sandwich, And so, like, I think that's a more, yeah, I think they're more bacteria than virus. I mean, because virus is a weird thing. Virus is a really weird thing. They're not alive. Like, whenever, you hear, I've heard, the government health officials say, like, oh, there could be live virus on a doorknob or whatever for 3 days. There's no such thing as a live virus. There's active virus, which means that its proteins are intact and can interact with cell membranes. But there's nothing live about a virus. It doesn't eat, it doesn't poop, it doesn't breathe, it doesn't think, it doesn't do anything. All it is a vehicle to alter genetic code. And we talked about this with Rit, with regards to like simulation theory, that the virus can just be a code in the system, and so that viruses are their own thing. It's the way we use the term computer virus is very accurate because it's the same way these work with biology. So humans are more bacteria, and we can be beneficial bacteria, but we can also become an infestation to the earth, and I think that's a important distinction I would put into that if we're using biological terms. They're not errors. They're a change. Okay, so all right, there's this one virus they found. There's a invasive plant called multiflora rose, and they found this naturally occurring virus that when it infects a plant, it changes its DNA to do two things. One, it takes when it grows, it doesn't have thorns on it anymore. And so one reason that multiflora rose can become invasive is because nothing will eat it because it has thorns all over it. And when bushes are infected with this virus, they don't grow thorns, and animals, deer and stuff like that, start to eat them again and kind of limit their population and stop them from being invasive. The other thing that and so this is really weird. It changes the DNA of the rose in low light conditions to grow thornless. In high light, I don't know if that's the right term, but anyway, if it's in a field where it's getting a lot of sunlight, the virus makes the DNA make the plant red, so it doesn't get enough blue light, and it won't grow enough. It will be a very stunted plant. It also doesn't grow the thorns, so it's really bizarre. It's like this code that was put in that actually has a benefit to the ecology of the system, and it's just this naturally occurring virus, and those are what it does. So what I'm saying is that they're not an error in the code, they're a rewrite of a code that had an error, if that makes sense. It kind of equates in my mind the ecological damage that an invasive plant can do. There's this virus that came out of fucking nowhere, and people actually, there's conservationists that try to isolate this virus and spray it on multiflora rose. But what's up in the woods? But that's the thing, is like, it's possible this virus came out of nowhere to fix the error in the code that humans were damaging our ecosystem, so yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe it's a jump, to equate some stupid virus with multiflora rose in the ecosystem to, a disease pandemic ravaging humans, but it makes sense to my plant nerd mind. And I mean, it's happened before. With other pandemics and outbreaks, and like how many times was there a virus outbreak? During times that were brutal times. Like the Black Plague, and the Spanish flu, all that stuff happened at like tumultuous times for humanity. Well, I think the Black Plague is a bacteria, but still, outbreaks, pandemics, stuff like that, like, they don't just happen out of nowhere, And this virus, if you notice all the stuff that's happening in the economy, like, this is all stuff that I've been talking about, other people have been talking about for years, But nobody cared, it wasn't a problem. And then this virus hits, and now it's a real big problem, and now we have to figure this shit out. We have no choice. Whether it's from an environmental standpoint or a financial standpoint, like, there's stuff that we needed to address, and we were unwilling to because we were too fat and happy. And so we need to get shaken out of that comfort zone and in order to be able to address these problems. And so, yeah, it's to equate that to code. It's almost like, Gaia or whoever's programming this shit, wrote some new code and has to inject it into the system. And unfortunately, that means 100,000 people die in this country, or whatever we're up to, or whatever. They stopped reporting the numbers because now we got another distraction. I don't even know what's going on other than the TWIV podcast I listen to, and they don't even have the numbers. And then the numbers came out from the CDC that 50% of all coronavirus tests in this country are either false positives or false negatives. They don't know. And then when you add to that the fact that all the deaths being reported, there's some fuckery there, whatever. It's like the numbers don't even matter anymore. So, like, yeah, why even report them? It may not even be a distraction of civil unrest. It's like it was all bullshit numbers anyway. Like, I mean, obviously there's people really getting sick and stuff like that, but if we're trying to look at it as a whole statistically, like, it was all kind of bullshit. Maybe, I don't know. But I do think they'll go back to reporting that, because that's going to be the only weapon the government has to stop all this protesting, is to scare everyone back inside. So two things are going to happen COVID-wise from all the protests. One is it's, all this mass gathering is going to cause a huge second wave, and we just bought ourselves, 3 more months of lockdown. Or it's not going to get worse. People aren't scared about the numbers and stuff anymore. And this was just the end of the COVID panic, was a huge riot, civil unrest, and, whatever. It's going to be interesting to watch in regards to virus and the media. Because literally, I mean, I haven't, in the last week, I haven't heard anything about COVID. You're kind of afraid of nuclear war and shit still happening with the authoritarian leaders in charge of these weapons. So here's one thing, and I'll get into this with Chris when we do that UFO podcast episode. I believe, aliens, time travelers, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, spirit guides, but I think it's all the same thing. But I don't think that they will let us do that. I think, so if you look, Roswell, New Mexico, right? That was like the first spot where, like, there was like potential UFO landing and whatever. It's like 20 miles away from where the first atomic bomb was detonated, and it was like a year later. And so I think it's like, again, going back to that, like, evolution that I talked about and how the universe evolves. I think civilizations, life starts on planets and evolves to something resembling us. And eventually that evolves to the point of creating nuclear weapons, which is the first step in sustainable energy. And at first, we use it as weapons before we really, get a handle on it being energy, and then, being able to use that to create ships that can actually populate our solar system, not outside the solar system. And that's just kind of something that civilizations need to learn, is how to harness nuclear energy safely. But when we use it for explosions, think about, we send radio signals out, and they go out of our solar system. I bet the energy from a nuclear explosion sends shockwaves outside of our solar system as well, and that is picked up by the, other dimensional life or whatever. And they started, that's where, like, the UFO stuff started really picking up for humans. And I think it's because they're like, oh, the monkeys figured out, we gotta make sure they don't blow themselves up, And if you go back, like, we've only used nuclear bombs, twice in the history of them existing on people. We've never done it again. And the numbers of the stockpile have increased over and over and over. And for my entire life, it's been a threat, and it's never been used. And, I don't think, And there's a lot of reports, and we'll get into this with Chris because he knows a lot more about it than I do. But there's a lot of reports of like where bombs were about to get dropped, that UFO came in and like turned it off or something. I can't remember, but I think there's something to that. Like, I think if there is aliens and UFOs and whatever, I think that they don't want us and won't let us blow ourselves up. Yeah, again, Chris could expand on that, but that's an idea that I have that I just don't think. I think it's all tied into that. I think, yeah, the Manhattan Project and stuff like that. That was a beacon we sent out into the universe that kind of brought all that towards us. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. All right, guys. Well, I actually have a work call that I have to do, but this was cool. I hope the quality was good. I hope everyone enjoyed Stan's live stream as well. I do like doing this. Like I said, I still like doing our podcasts and stuff. That's not going to stop. But I do think the live stream, either solo or maybe some other people other than Stan and I, or just Stan and I together, whatever. I think we're going to continue doing that. So thanks for tuning in. We're calling it Help Find the Others Radio, and I think it's a good way to reach out. And for anyone that misses it, obviously it saves the video and everything. So thanks for listening to me ramble, and until next time, thanks for helping find the others.